Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel and welcome to all my new followers. This week we're going to talk about using flash on film, which is a fun topic, and this topic has been requested by a fellow YouTuber named Ali from Ali's Vintage Camera Ali. I highly recommend that you check out her channel. It's a wonderful channel and I will link her below. Using flash on film is not that much different in its essence from using it on digital. It's just that on digital you're worried about not clipping the highlights, so you usually underexpose a little bit. On film we're worried about not getting muddy, dark areas, dark tones. We're interested in lifting up those dark tones out of the darkness, so to say. So we want to lift that up to get a less contrasty scene without clipping the highlights. Even though film does take a little bit more abuse on the overexposure side, you can easily clip the highlights with flash photography. In my humble opinion, with the best flash photographers or the best photographers who use flash, you don't notice that flash has been used. And so that's sort of my philosophy, if you will. I don't want to see in my photos that flash has been used. Do I always and every time succeed at that? No. So guys, this first part is going to be the gear and kind of what to do with it. Not what you should like. Nothing is ever set in stone. What I like, you might not like, and to each their own. Nobody can tell you that what you're doing isn't right. You can get really creative with flash photography, and to me it's opened new avenues in the realm of photography. Using flash photography intimidates a lot, but it shouldn't, because it's actually fairly easy. Now, the gear that you'll need, it's simple, of course. You'll need some sort of flash and a camera that can trigger that flash. You can trigger it in many different ways. Like for instance, this Godox trigger that triggers these Godox flashes. These are 300 watts. That's more than enough for what I need. Usually if you buy the studio strobes, studio lights, studio flashes, whatever they call them, you're gonna see a watt or a power rating expressed in watts. 300 watts is more than enough, times 2 for what I needed. And you just have to figure out what it is that you're trying to light up. Sometimes I see setups and I ask myself, geez, are you trying to light up the Dallas Cowboys Stadium? Or, it's such an elaborate setup. But 300 watts times 2 is more than enough to light up one person in a home setting or even in a studio setting. So, but you're gonna have to find a way to trigger your flashes. So these Godox flashes, or triggers I should say, they trigger, what I like about is that they trigger the studio strobes, but they're also gonna trigger, for Nikon at least, I think they do it for Canon too, they're gonna trigger the camera flashes, the flashes that you mount on your camera in TTL mode. That's pretty neat. Godox has a whole lineup in that. You can check those out. TTL flash is really handy. I don't really use it because what I do use is, of course, which is the next thing that you'll need, is a flash meter. The most popular one is this Seaconic L308S. I like it. It's very accurate. You'll quickly learn what it does and how it does it, but you will absolutely need a flash meter unless you will use your digital camera to kind of scope things, but I think you'll learn a lot more with an actual flash meter, especially on film. So flash meter, a trigger, flashes we have in all kinds. We have flashes that are, they just produce one power. They have one power setting. They're always going to be at that same power setting. Like my dad used to have a little Metz flash. It just works off of your f-stop and the ISO rating or ASA DIN rating back then. So then there's flashes like this Vivitar that it does have a sensor. It's going to look at the distance and the power rating that you put in there, or the ISO rating. And then there's flashes that are completely TTL or ITTL. depending on which brand that you shoot with. Those are handy too. Sometimes you'll see a photographer with a setup that has these 3 flashes or 3 strobes in a configuration bouncing off an umbrella to soften the light, which brings me to the next topic, which are the light diffusers. Light diffusers, they come in all shapes and sizes. Essentially what they do is they will diffuse the light. And then you'll think, yeah, no, duh, light diffuser. But what it does, it scatters the light. The last thing that you want a flash to do is remain small and directional. You want it to scatter and be a big light source. Just like these umbrellas behind me. What they do is they scatter the light, the little light photons. They make sure that preferably that little light photon only touches the subject once, and then it bounces off the subject, never to be seen again. That's how you, hopefully, that's how you create nice soft light. That's what a diffuser does. A common mistake that I do see a lot with the shoot-through umbrella is the distance from the light source or the flash to the center of the umbrella is too close. So you still remain with a very small light source, which is then harsh and directional and not flattering to the subject. And I'll demonstrate that here in this little demonstration. You just have to make sure, see how the light source goes bigger? The bigger the better. It's going to light up that whole umbrella, and therefore you're going to have soft light. Another mistake is, of course, that the umbrella or the softbox or whichever diffuser that you use, softboxes are great, in my opinion, when you're not in a small setting. If you're in a small setting with a small room with hopefully white walls that scatters that light back, then you're good. But if you're in a bigger setting, like outside, softboxes do work better, in my opinion at least. But again, to each their own. But you want to make sure that your light source, your diffusion, isn't too far away from the subject, whether it is a person or whether it is an inanimate object that you're trying to light up. You want to have it close, so then it becomes soft and diffuse again. The sort of wraparound look, which you'll see in part 2 of this video, where I'll discuss some photos, I'll go over some photos. The sort of soft wraparound light that I like, I usually achieve with just 2 umbrellas at a 45-degree angle. If you saw my video where I shot with my son on the expired film, you'll see that I use 45-degree angles. That's how you make sure that that light only bounces off the subject once and it never comes back. You don't want to have it too directional, again, because then there's a chance that you'll get hot spots and stuff like that. But I usually have an umbrella like this, which is a 45-inch umbrella at about 1 yard to 1.5 yards, no further away from the subject. Now, umbrellas we have them in all sizes. This little 32-incher. I brought this one to go to Europe. Really cool little umbrella. It's stashed in my backpack. If I travel, I like to travel light. And this was perfect to travel to Europe and take some portraits of family. But we can go all the way up to this 90-incher or 60-incher, which, I mean, you get the drift, right? And this one is also really cool because it comes with an diffusion panel, which really makes it into a soft box, and which makes the light so beautifully soft. These are very popular. Photech makes them, and they're very popular with a lot of photographers. But you can make it into whatever you want to. If you want to have harsh directional light, you can use that. I like the soft, what I call the wraparound light. And you definitely achieve that better with a bigger umbrella, especially if you shoot inside. Then you definitely get that beautiful soft light. Now, if you want to use a flash to bounce, let's say this Vivitar here, Most flashes, they come with these click stops or stop settings on an angle, so you can bounce it off a ceiling. Again, you're looking for a 45-degree angle. So when that light bounces off the ceiling, it bounces onto the subject in a 45-degree angle and then never comes back to that subject. And that's how you get that nice soft light versus flashing directly into a person. And so therefore you have to make sure that, here you see the 45-degree, you might not be able to see that, but 45 degrees. That's why they have these settings on there. So you can measure that and then light up your subject like that, or the inanimate objects. Quite often these flashes, they'll come with the diffusion little thing that you can buy online. And you'll see it in a photo later. That's how I light up settings in the house. Very simple on top of the camera and doesn't even look like you've used flash. It's so soft, it scatters the light. You still get a little bit of directional light, but it's mostly soft. That's one diffuser. A company called LumiQuest makes this stuff, which is really cool. It attaches right on top of your flash and it scatters the light around. Makes it softer. Again, it scatters it. That's all it does. You want light to be scattered. You don't want it to point it directly at an subject, because then you get that unflattering, harsh light, unless that is what you like. Some people do like that, to each their own. I like softer light that, to where, again, in the photo, you cannot see whether or not flash has actually been used. That's always my goal. When I use flash, and once again, I don't always succeed, I try to make sure that when I use flash, that it looks as if flash hasn't been used. But what you're going to need is a camera, a light meter, a flash, and a diffusion panel. And what that is, what you want, you have to decide. There is a book which I've learned a lot from, which is called Photographing People. And you can see my light source shining away as I go like that. But this book has taught me a lot. It comes with diagrams of how the light has been set up. I learned a lot from that, and what it does and how it does it and the sizes and all of that. It's a wonderful book. Eventually you're going to have to buy some books to learn from or read some, but you're going to learn the most from actually just doing it. So don't be afraid to just, load up a 35mm roll and shoot up a whole roll lighting one subject. Take notes. Take notes of what you did, and it's super easy, I guarantee you. Take notes of what you lit up with what flash and how you did it, and you'll learn from that. Much more than being in books and, being on YouTube. But you'll learn a lot from actually just doing it. Don't be afraid. Dedicate a whole roll. Different films are going to behave differently. Not every film loves flash. Portra loves flash, 400H does, but it's not around anymore. It is, but it isn't. Not every film loves flash. That you have to look at that as well. Most black and white films, that's a general statement, but most black and white films will love flash. FB4 certainly does. Very comfortable using flash. You're about to see that. This is sort of the gear that you need and on how to use it. Guys, we're going to jump on the computer and look at some photos, and then I'll explain what I did and what's good and maybe what's not so good. Well guys, here we are behind the computer, and of course everything that I'm going to sort of explain to you with regards to flash, with regards to using flash on film, is going to be heavily through the lens of portraiture, because that's just what I did over the years. That's what I was attracted to fairly quick. And you can see that in this photo. This is maybe, a year and a half into my journey into photography, where I figured out that I really was attracted to portraiture, and I wanted to capture that. And of course you start with your family. This is my little brother back in the day, and here I always noticed that he sat a certain way when he visited. my little bachelor apartment back then, and I wanted to capture that in, I just wanted to capture that on a photo, and here I've bounced the flash. But as you can see in his eyes, it's not all fun and games with bouncing flash. Here, the angle was shorter than 45 degrees, so beneath his eye socket, there's a little bit of darkness. That could have been lit up if I had more of a shallow angle, more distance away from him, or if I would have used that LumiQuest bouncer straight into him, or any other diffuser. But here I bounced. I still love the portrait because it is my little brother from back in the day. And yeah, this is just where you can see where it, the grain. This is, by the way, this is Tri-X. And you see very little grain. This is Tri-X 320, I believe it used to be. And you can just see how little grain with flash, it lights up the skin, it softens the skin a little bit, which I personally really prefer versus, indoors. If you shoot naturally, you're going to get a lot of grain, and that flash just takes the sting out of it. Here's a second photo. Here you can clearly see that not every film loves flash. This is my brother's ex back in the day. This is maybe weeks apart from the shot of my little brother that you see. This is Superior's predecessor. But anyway, Superior 400, we'll say, for this video's sake. And you see highlights here. It just doesn't do really well with flash. It's not really great with portraiture. We see all kinds of highlights. I bounced again, but I did back up a little bit. We still see a little bit of darkness, but it's not as prevalent as it was in my brother's picture. So it is more pleasing than the straight flash. Of course, back then I was dirt poor. I didn't have any kind of money for nothing, so I had to make do. I knew I didn't like portraiture, so I was going to shoot no matter what. But fast forward, 6-7 years on this photo. This is a friend of the house back in that day, and she was always happy to help me with portraiture and pose for me, and always happy to take photos. Here you can see the sunlight on her, but here I used a little 32-incher to kind of, take the sting out of those harsh shadows. And this, by the way, was shot on Fuji Pro 160S in its heyday. Look at the skin tones. Fantastic. Takes flash like a charm, this film. And but you see the sting is sort of out of those harsh shadows. That's what a little bit of full flash outside will do for you as well. Here also that which normally would have been very harsh in the sunlight. I just liked the color of the eyes, and then, in combination with the green that she was wearing and the green in the back. So I used a little bit of fill flash here. In this photo, this is definitely a year or two ago, where I kind of wanted to make a little bit of a study of light. You'll notice that very soon actual studio portraits or studio photography will end up being very boring to you, so you're going to want to start experimenting with flash in different settings, not necessarily in a studio setting, and it's well portrayed in this picture. This is flash. This is not anything other than flash. I was really trying to have the flash kind of graze her instead of that full on or that completely lit up. I was inspired by a fellow Instagram person on there, or a friend, you could say, and inspired by a German movie, which is called Wings of Desire, a very old movie. But anyway, you can see the possibilities here. Again, this is Ilford FP4 pushed 2 stops, and you almost see no grain. And I know that is a relatively sharp film as it is right out of the box, but it's just beautiful. Flash photography, I love it. I think I'll always love it. I went into it fairly quickly. Fast forward again. This is off that video that I was talking about with my son. Here's where I definitely personally feel that I nailed it. There's no way you can see flash is actually being used. There's no shadows behind him. The only way that you can see it is in his eyes. You're going to see catch lights. And you're going to notice that there are whole forums dedicated to catch lights in the eyes with flash photography. And although a picture might be otherwise really great, people will completely trash a certain photo because it doesn't have the right catch lights in there, which I think personally is ridiculous. But catch lights are, lights in the eyes that you see. Here we have two. It always gives away what sort of reflector or what sort of diffuser was used. But here in this picture of my girlfriend, my beautiful girlfriend, here you can see wonderful catch lights. I personally really love these. Also here, I feel like, there's nothing really does give away that flash is used. There's no harsh lighting. Other than maybe my girlfriend does have a little bit, her skin's a little oily, so it's going to reflect a little bit, but it's very pleasing, this light. Wonderful catch lights in the eye. And it just completely, and don't mind all that dust that you see, but it just takes the sting out of it. And, it really lifts up that film that you use, and you don't see a whole lot of grain. And that is really what I love about using flash, especially indoors. I don't always, have a 1600 grain or 1600 speed film handy, or I don't always want to have to push. And that's where flash comes in really handy, even for shots like this. And to be quite honest, most of my photography is this, recording daily life. This is just a bounce straight up off the ceiling. This is Delta 400 here. Takes flash really, really well. Should take flash well because it's a professional level film designed for portraiture. Wonderful film. But you see very little grain. That's why I took this photo out. Very little grain that you see, and this is 35 millimeter. But just a little bit of flash to kind of fill in those darks, even though it turns dark here, but that's 1 and 1 is 2, because we're bouncing straight up. We're bouncing almost straight up and down. There's no angle here. So we're going to have some darkness. I don't personally care because this is the fridge. Who cares about it being dark on the left? But this is just bouncing, really simple, 400 speed film. I don't have to push. I can use f5.6, at 1/250th of a second with most flash sync speeds and just be done with it. And then here, last photo, last example. This is of the last black and white roll of the Konica. And here's where I simply, I used that little Metz flash straight on with the little diffuser panel, that little plastic box. And it's still fairly harsh lighting, but I still like the shot because it's just recording daily life. This was on a day that me and my girlfriend were planning on heading out the door. And I just want to have a record, of that, a photographical record. And this is more than enough. Not every photo has to be a Pulitzer Prize winning photo or, this award-winning photo. And anybody who tells you that every single photo that they take is that, they're just telling you a bunch of hoopla. But we do see highlights being clipped, a little bit here. You can bring that down. Even if you were to print that, you could mitigate that and not see that. So that's not that much of an issue. Especially in the digital realm, you can easily edit that out. But just as an example that you see, you can clip highlights. This is Ilford FP4. It does take flash really well. But this is because the flash, I probably should have stopped down a stop. And then I wouldn't have dealt with that. But this was just a guesstimation from over the years. At some point you just know what it's going to do. But guys, don't be afraid to use flash. Flash is absolutely wonderful. I hope this video was helpful to you somehow. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them down in the comments, and I'll definitely do my best to answer them. And I hope that, everybody's staying safe and everybody's, I wish everybody a great week next week, and we'll see you in the next episode. Love you guys. Bye-bye.